The students here are really showing how the boundaries between work and school. They asked me before the session, what do you think about that we are here doing our schoolwork? Yeah, I agree. They are doing their schoolwork. So Mark, at UNESCO, you are studying intensely the global arena of learning.
Yes.
Please give us your message.
Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here today. The last time I was here in Sweden, in Stockholm, was 2001. And this seems like eons ago. Back then it was still socially acceptable not to have a cell phone. I think I only checked email maybe once a week. My university, which was in the heart of Silicon Valley, still did not have a classroom management system, an online portal for courses. And I remember that about 50% of my university professors refused to use email. They thought that the internet was something that was not appropriate for serious scholarship. A lot has changed. And given the changes that we've witnessed in the past decade, it's my pleasure to speak about how technology will intersect with youth and education now and in the future. Valerie gave us a wonderful context to talk about the stakes that are involved. And she also mentioned that education has proven surprisingly resilient to change. Other sectors have changed enormously, from business to government to education. But education, by and large, still looks about like it did a century ago. Yet today, there is a growing consensus that technology is finally slated to transform old education paradigms, and the stakes could not be higher. Across the EU, we know that youth unemployment is hovering at crisis levels. It is, said candidly, inexcusable that 1 in 4 people, young people on the continent, cannot find work. The good news is that education can help alleviate this situation, and indeed it is one of the only things that we know can alleviate this in the long term. Excuse me. This slide here aggregates data collected from the 34 countries that belong to the OECD, and the takeaway is unambiguous. More and better education helps people find work. So when we talk about improving education through technology, we are also talking about healing the unemployment crisis. The actions we take now in the education sector will play out over decades in the world of work. My presentation today has 2 main parts. In part 1, I will paint an admittedly very utopian vision of technology integration in education. I will then dissect the constituent parts of this vision. This will help the people in this room better assess and evaluate education policies and initiatives. In part 2, I will describe the mistakes that governments and others make when trying to leverage technology for education. Hopefully this will help Sweden avoid these same mistakes and come closer to realizing the utopian vision presented in part 1. I'm now going to play a short video. And I like this video because it attempts to show you a very specific vision of what technology integration might look like in the next 5 years. It is, I have to admit, a video that was produced by Intel, and while we generally go to great lengths not to brand our presentations, it is the only example I know that shows such a particular vision of the future. So, without further delay, let's take a trip to the not-so-distant future. Okay. I know that that film can provoke strong reactions, but for the time being, let's take it at face value. Let's agree that that is a possible vision of the future, and that it is a desirable vision of the future. What I want to do now is I want to unpack it. What specifically makes this vision so rosy? What separates this idealized school of the future from the schools we have today right here in Sweden and across the developed world? I've identified 8 components. The first is personalized learning. Think of how teaching works today. We lose kids who are falling behind because the coursework is too hard, and we bore kids who are ahead of their peers. We teach smack in the middle. The best teachers try to differentiate their instruction to challenge each individual student while simultaneously not overwhelming him or her. But this is hard to do for one student, let alone 30. Technology of the type we already have today will make differentiation infinitely easier. Smart software can determine a student's reading level and give them level-appropriate text. Every student is growing all of the time. If there is anything that should excite you about educational technology, this is it. Personalized learning will go a long way to help students realize their individual potentials. We know that learning happens in many places, but formal learning tends to be isolated to the 4 walls of a classroom. There was a reason for this 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, but not today. With technology we can do much more to bridge in-school and out-of-school learning and keep parents informed about what their children are studying. Think about it for a minute, those of you who are parents. What are your students studying right now in their history class? What are they learning in science? What books are they reading in literature? You don't know, right? Why not? We have the potential to make this possible tomorrow. A great deal of evidence at UNESCO shows that students who have to do long commutes to work or take care of a sibling at home are at a severe disadvantage when it comes to schooling. Why haven't we empowered them with tools that allow them to learn anywhere it's convenient, regardless of geographic location or time of day? We have been using assessment wrong for years. We use tests for one reason: to rank and sort, reward and punish. Congratulations, you're smart, you're dumb, you failed. It's why students hate tests. They know we're judging them. All the time, schools give tests and don't give information about student performance for months to the instructors or the schools themselves. It's insane, and it does almost nothing to help inform the intellectual growth of students. The more feedback students get, the better. The faster they get it, the better. Technology makes this possible. Working with students in classrooms is all well and good, but that's an awfully small group in our connected world. People with similar interests and aptitudes have found each other online without any assistance from the education sector, but a lot of students have not. Schools and teachers can help students find intellectual communities that fuel and sustain learning with technology. Does anyone in this audience, does anybody here use Rosetta Stone? It's software that helps you learn a foreign language. And it is very good at making it easy to study. How does it work? I turn on my tablet while eating breakfast and complete a few short lessons. Then on my ride to work, I finish the unit I started in the morning on my mobile phone. At lunch, I begin the next unit on my desktop computer. My device doesn't matter one bit. Everything is synced in the cloud. Why have we not done this for our students in schools today? Does this teacher look like a person who graduated in the lowest third of his university class? Does he look like someone who's going to work for a salary that is just above the poverty line? Not at all. This educator is a bona fide professional. He is deeply knowledgeable about his discipline and theories of how to teach it. He has completed extensive and rigorous teacher training. If you leave with only one message today, it's that technology is going to demand more of our teachers, not less. If we want to build better education systems, it will start with finally giving teachers the training, the salary, and the professional respect they deserve. Presently, we waste class time. It's a valuable commodity. Think of the effort required to gather all those students in schools. The electricity, the water, the busing, the list goes on and on. And then what do we do when we get them there? We talk at them. Only we do it badly. We do the exact same thing they could do online, and we do it worse. We've known for millennia that students learn best by doing. Confucius said, "Tell me, I will forget. Show me, I may remember. Involve me, I will understand." Why are we still doing it wrong? The flipped classroom is the way forward. Students learn rote content at home and then apply it creatively in school. Educators should not disseminate information. They should be managing and facilitating the complex tasks that make learning meaningful, authentic, and exciting. At UNESCO, we think education holds great promise, not only here in Sweden and in Europe, but around the world. I want to briefly note a few of the remarkable things ICT can do that the video did not touch on. Today, as you know, a student with a broadband internet connection or mobile connection can take a full course from an MIT professor, complete assignments, get feedback on them, and carry on discussions with fellow classmates all for free. People in the developing world have lacked real educational opportunities for decades. That is changing. We have the potential to cultivate talent all over the world. Classrooms are great, but we know that learning, and sometimes the most meaningful learning, happens outside of them. Technology can power this learning. I have seen demonstrations of educational applications that allow you to snap a picture of a leaf with your smartphone, and then the software tells you what tree that leaf came from and everything you might ever want to know about that particular species of tree. Geotagging and better image recognition are going to turn the whole world into a classroom. We've all been reading about Syria, the tragedy there. UNHCR tells us that the civil war in that country has already displaced 2.5 million people. The conflict is, right now, today, robbing young people of their educations. In the past, it was hard to extend educational opportunities to refugees. It still is hard, but technology is making it easier. UNESCO is working to leverage mobile phone networks to extend education to refugees in Jordan and Iraq. Why are we using mobile networks? The networks often work well when other infrastructure is broken. They're easier to replace than brick and mortar buildings. And many Syrians, even though they're refugees, still have a working mobile device. What I assure you they do not have are physical textbooks. We can, in effect, begin to reach the unreachable. Research shows that simply changing the way text displays on a digital screen can help people with problems like dyslexia read with greater comprehension. And technology is already helping millions of people with physical impairments. A very inexpensive device can read text aloud. Technology will help people with disabilities succeed academically. And you've all heard about big data. This is not news. Well, big data is going to impact the education sector. In the past, we have not had enough data. By the time 2020 rolls around, we're going to have more data than we know what to do with. We're going to have to figure out what data is meaningful, what is not, where correlations exist, and what triggers causation, and it will improve the education sector. Finally, cost efficiency. Not only can we do all of what I just described with effective integration of technology, we can do it for less money. That's right, goodbye textbooks with their astronomical price tags and distribution costs. Hello e-readers, automatic updates, dynamic content, and content tailored for individuals. Technology has a way of allowing us to do more with less money, and I imagine the same will hold true for the education sector. So to wrap up, we have seen the vision. And education is about to be disrupted by technology. While you are wise to be suspicious, especially in education, of anyone telling you this time is different, change is just around the corner, trust me, this time, it really is different. But there is a less promising side to technology integration in education. And I make those strong arguments in part one to elicit reactions. But let's look at the other side now. Let's look at the bad news. The rosy vision we saw in part one is not what we're moving towards. Arguably, we are moving in the opposite direction. Many of us recognize that technology is not a panacea, and indeed it may be exactly the opposite. We may just be being sold a bill of goods from technology companies. One of the central conclusions to emerge from over 2 decades of efforts to improve education through technology is that it is a catastrophic waste of money. Yet, in my heart of hearts, I do believe that technology can transform education for the better. For the purpose of this presentation, I wish to remain cautiously optimistic. And in the spirit of cautious optimism, I want to identify briefly 5 mistakes we seem to make again and again when trying to integrate technology in education. Let's look at these 5 mistakes. John Dewey famously said the educational process has no end beyond itself. It is its own end. The same cannot be said of technology. In education, it must be a means, nothing more. Yet government officials and the public often erroneously believe that the mere presence of technology in classrooms is a sign of progress. If you don't believe me, here's a roundup of recent headlines. And let me be clear, I'm not saying these initiatives will fail, I hope they all succeed. But during my tenure at UNESCO, I've noticed a dangerous trend of politicians promising to buy all students flashy new technology, iPads for all, even though there is no clear plan of how to make these expensive initiatives work. Planning is vital. Investments in teacher training should, as a general rule, exceed the amount spent on technology itself. I have never, in my time at UNESCO, seen an initiative that spends more on training teachers how to use technology than on the technology itself, not once. If teachers are not on board with initiatives or don't know what to do with the technology, they won't use it. Students may be digital natives, but they need help like the rest of us. Students will need to get used to using technology to do things that are challenging and probably a bit uncomfortable at first. This isn't just using Facebook. Not all data is useful. Policymakers need to be judicious about what data they collect and how it is used productively. And finally, if teachers and students are not shown what they are supposed to do technology, they will, as the saying goes, use new tools in old ways. The education sector will need leaders with the vision to show what the goal is and how to get there. What the transformation Valerie was talking about, what it is, how we're going to move towards it. Mistake number 2. The second mistake is trying to use technologies to replace teachers or dictate exactly how they should do a job that's far too complicated for top-down bureaucratic prescriptions. In my view, one of the most compelling reasons not to buy technology in the education sector is because the money would be better spent recruiting and training great teachers. But I don't I hope it can be a both and choice. We know that teachers matter more to student achievement than any other. Teachers matter more to student achievement than class size, class time, the presence or absence of technology, and the organization of schools and classes. From this, my hope is that more and more, that as technology reaches schools, we use it as a chance to increase the status of teachers, train them better, and perhaps even pay them more. Integrating powerful learning technologies in classrooms is not a simple task, and we will need skilled professionals to lead the way. This next point, this next mistake, is best explained visually. The image here is learning, but I'm not sure it's learning that will prepare students for the knowledge economies that demand flexible skills and cooperation. this is a better image of learning. It's not this, it's this. Technology needs to make for better and richer human interaction. Dewey's point about the importance of social interaction gets repeated by just about every great educational thinker. From Socrates to Vygotsky, the message has been unambiguous. Education is social. While I want to stress that face-to-face interaction seems to be especially rich and perhaps uniquely well-suited for learning, this is not to say that digital interaction is not also meaningful. Conversations about technology integration generally take it as an article of faith that all students will and should use individual devices. I see value in this model, but I also see a place for the type of learning that's happening in this picture. Very rarely do you see education initiatives where many students are using one device. Yet in our personal lives, we all do this, right? We sit at cafes, we share our devices with others. We should be doing more of this in the education sector. Mistake 4. We all love these perennial debates, Apple or PC, Nokia or Samsung, but we're diverting our attention from a critical task. That is selecting the educational software and tools that will be used in and out of schools. I imagine most people in this room have heard of the Khan Academy. Its build is kind of the next great thing, the transformative moment for education and technology. But what is the Khan Academy really? It's just a bunch of videos of people basically writing on a chalkboard. There's nothing transformative or novel about it. It's how teaching has worked for centuries. So when we talk about educational technology, we need to think very deeply about content. And how is the content? Is it an improvement in what we had in the past? We also know that even if every child has state-of-the-art tools, technology, that doesn't mean learning is automatically occurring. I've seen a lot of terrible digital content that does almost nothing to cultivate higher-order thinking skills and instead promotes the rote memorization of facts. And finally, mistake number 5. When you evaluate ICT in education initiatives through this lens, you see a lot of failure. It is remarkable how easy it is to help young people who are skilled at helping themselves and how difficult it is to help students who are not so good at helping themselves. At the global level, it's the same story. It's easy to help students who are upper class, live in cities, and are males. It's much harder to design education initiatives, whether they involve technology or not, to help students who are disadvantaged by race, class, gender, and geography. A question we regularly ask ourselves at UNESCO is how can technology assist those female students in the north of a country like Kenya, where close to 50% of children will never go to school. Most of the technologies I see in education are not helping these students, but rather kids who are already on the winning side of class, gender, and geography. A lot of people say MOOCs are the answer. MOOCs are going to solve all our problems. This is an image of some of the major MOOC providers. They're not new. The Open University in the UK, for instance, has been doing this for decades. So despite the hype about MOOCs, what is the completion rate of them, of students who take MOOC courses? Anybody know? 6%. If any university in just about any country was boasting completion rates of 6%, it would lose public funding. Who is taking MOOC courses? People who don't speak English? These are the people who drop out at the get-go. They have no background knowledge. They drop out, don't complete the course. They don't have sufficient time to finish the course. They have no support. They gave up. And who finishes a MOOC course? People with master's degrees and PhDs in the subjects they're studying. Those are the people who finish MOOCs courses. So when everybody says MOOCs are transformative, show me MOOCs that are helping students who are not already excelling academically, and I'll pay attention. Many observers say that educational technology is in our 6th transformative moment. First there was TV, then the PC, then the laptop, now mobile devices, and through it all, we have spent a tremendous amount of money. And the outcomes are no different. But I want to end on a hopeful note. I really do think the idealized future we saw in the video is possible. The technology is here. It exists today. It is up to us to implement. And if we do it right, voila, a better education system for Sweden and Europe, and we sincerely hope the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark West, UNESCO, and I'd like, while thinking of all those challenges and visions, I'd like John